Hey everyone, Rick here, and folks, welcome back to another social media showdown for, oh that's right, Battlefields of Mana, folks. I don't want to spoil anything, but that last match came down to the final die roll. If the rest of these go even half that exciting, folks, we are in for a real treat. Now, a couple changes here. I just changed the battlefield. It's still 2 foot by 2 foot. The terrain is still the same. I just changed the playing surface itself because that last one, the lighting made it look like we were fighting in a desert. It just washed out the color. At least now, this one looks a little bit more green in this lighting. I just wanted it to be a little more grassy looking. All right, also, the other changes, this will be the final matchup that I'll be posting on my main YouTube channel. The rest of these are going to be posted on my Battlefields of Mana YouTube channel. I am going to post a comment below using that channel and pin it so that that channel will be easy for you guys to find. Now, it's not even too late. If you want to come up with a custom Battlefields of Mana army yourself, see it in a future battle report, leave a comment with your army composition. I'll leave instructions on how to create the army in the description below, but let's move on. It's time to decide who goes up against who. So we have a bunch of YouTubers here. They're going to be the Lunar Knights that have submitted their armies, and a bunch of Facebookers here who have submitted their armies, and they are the Regal Guard. YouTubers are Lunar Knights, Facebookers are Regal Guard. What social media platform can come up with the best army composition? We're about to find out. All right, so we're mixing these all up, and we're gonna find out who the YouTuber is, the lucky YouTuber for this battle report, and it's going to be Matthew M., who's going with 4 units, a unit of Heavy Cavalry, a unit of Mounted Crossbows, a unit of Foot Crossbows, and a unit of Axemen. Awesome. And who is Matthew going to go up against from Facebook? We are about to find out. Mix these up, and the Facebooker is Kim P. Now, she is Regal Guard, Mounted Archers ×2, Light Cavalry ×2, Swordsmen, and Peasant Militia. So this is a bigger army than Matt's. However, it just depends on composition. So we have 6 units up against 4. It's going to be very interesting. The last one, I believe, was the same amount of units per side. Kim's units are slightly cheaper. That's why there's more of them. So we'll see who ends up pulling out the victory here. All right, folks, and we are back with deployment. Kim won the roll-off to deploy first and go first, and also pick a side. Kim decided to go with this side of the battlefield. Why? Because she kind of wanted to deprive Matthew of the forest. She didn't want Matthew being able to stick his crossbowmen in the woods and just sit there and shoot out of them the entire time. So she decided to deploy closest to the woods. Additionally, she has a super fast army. Look at all this cavalry, and all 4 of these cavalry units have nimble, which means they can move twice and still engage in a combat action, or move 3 times. So those woods wouldn't really hamper her. However, here's how she deployed. Unit of Light Cav on that side of the dwelling so that it can shoot up that side just really fast, get a flank hopefully. Mounted Archers there kind of has an option. They can either kind of come this way or maybe support the Light Cavalry over on that side. Light Cavalry right in the center, so again they can move up and kind of get involved wherever they want. Mounted Archers right next to these woods. They are going to be able to get into those woods and maybe do what she was hoping Matthew wouldn't do, which is sit in those woods and just keep firing out of them. Then she has her 2 foot units on this side of the battlefield. Now, both of them are going to be able to get past the woods on this side, which is a good thing since foot units are slower. She, I think, is kind of leaning toward using those Peasant Militia. Now, this is very uncharacteristic for the Regal Guard, who you would think of as being, righteous and whatnot. But she may use them as meat shields just in case those crossbowmen decide to start firing at the swords to kind of keep the swordsmen safe as they make their way up here and deal with how Matthew deployed. Now, deployment is Kim went first. She deployed a unit. Matthew deploys a unit. Kim deploys another unit, and so on back and forth. So it wasn't this entire army and then Matthew's entire army. They were kind of trading off. Matthew went with this configuration. First unit Matthew placed was the Heavy Cavalry right in the center. He is going to just charge those guys straight up. They have fantastic offense. They have fantastic defense. They are just going to try to get right in the mix. In fact, he deployed them right after Kim deployed her mounted archers there. He figures she's going to stick them in the woods. He just wants to run these heavy cavalry right up and maybe get right in their faces, because the highest point unit on Kim's side, all 4 of these units are the same cost. 3 points apiece, so it doesn't matter. As long as he can eliminate one of those units, that'll be 3 points. Of course, some range to help out the heavy cavalry. Then his mounted crossbows over here. So they have a couple options as well. They can shoot over this way, or they can help shoot in the center. Crossbows, both foot and mounted, are fantastic offensively. They give a +1 to all their attack dice. These Axemen, kind of here to support the crossbows, but they are a bit slower, so wherever he placed them, he knew it would have to be terrain free. So he's going to try to run these guys up. He would love to get those Axemen involved with those light cavalry. And you know what? He's not even that afraid of getting shot at by the mounted archers. Why? Because one, not just the only, but one of the special abilities of the Axemen is that they become furious. As soon as they get whittled down to half or less remaining figures in the unit, they become furious, and that gives them an offensive bonus. Not to mention they're already brutality is another trait of theirs. Anyway, lots going on. We have all of these units deployed. We're going to start at the end of round 1. Round 1's a lot of movement. We'll be back at the end of both sides round 1. All right, folks, end of round 1. We've already had some bloodshed. So here's what happened. We'll start with Kim, because obviously Kim went first. Now, Kim has mounted archers, which is actually the only unit in the game that round 1 can get into position and take shots because of their incredible range and speed. So what she ended up doing was, and we'll start over here and move our way down. So yes, she did stick the Peasant Militia in front of the Swordsmen and are moving them up on that side of the forest. There's some crossbowmen over there now. And then she did move those mounted archers straight ahead. Popping them right there at the time didn't give her range to shoot where Matthew had deployed, but they are now safe in cover in case those crossbowmen decide to take a shot at them. Light Cavalry here moves straight up. We went over here. She did something kind of interesting. So she wanted to get that first round shot in, so she moved the mounted archers straight up and took shots at the Axemen, unfortunately doing no wounds. Of course, when you move and shoot, you do take a penalty, so those shots did not get through. Light Cavalry moved right behind her. Don't let Matthew hear this, but I think what she wants to do is bait the Axemen in. As soon as a unit moves into the front arc of a unit with range, the ranged unit does get a free volley off. Now, once that happens, though, she wants to get the heck out of Dodge. She does not want those mounted archers stuck in melee. So she's hoping she'll be able to break away and bounce back through the light cavalry, and then the light cavalry can deal with the Axemen. That's what she's hoping. We'll see what ends up happening, though. All right, so then for Matthew, what did he do? Well, everything moved up. The Axemen moved up as far as they could. They're not afraid. The Mounted Crossbowmen moved up. I know they're posed like they're shooting to the left, but the front is, the front facing is there. Now, they did take shots. They moved up, and they had actually a couple options. They could have shot at the mounted archers, which they thought about, but they figure, these light cavalry are going to be involved in combat quite a bit. Whereas the mounted archers, Kim's probably just going to run away with those. So Matthew decided to take shots at the light cavalry. He did do a wound. Heavy cavalry just moves straight up. They are not afraid. They know they're going to get shot at next turn by those archers, maybe flanked by those light cavalry. We'll see how that ends up going. But yeah, they are definitely not afraid. So then also crossbowmen moved up as far as they could. Now they have options as well. They have options to shoot there, or, you know, to start shooting at the peasant militia that Kim put in front of the swordsmen. So here are the positions moving into round 2. And from here on out, just like the last one, we're going to recap after each player's turn. So we'll be back after Kim's turn 2. All right, folks, we are back at the end of Kim's, aka the Regal Guards, turn 2. Oh, there were a couple of poor dice rolls, one by either side, maybe one a little worse than the other. Let's start down here, where the peasant militia and the swordsmen continue to move up, wield, and move forward. That's as far as they could go. The peasant militia couldn't quite get into contact with those crossbowmen just yet. Mounted archers here in the woods did take shots at the heavy cavalry. Heavy cavalry are armor 3, meaning 4s or more for the mounted archers. They did not have a move and shoot penalty this turn because they were stationary. I rolled all 6 dice. They were all 1s and 2s. How unlucky is that? Okay, so then over here, we charged in with the light cavalry. Kim charged in right into the front of those mounted crossbowmen. Now that could have been super risky. In fact, the light cavalry did take a wound. They already had a wound, which meant 1 light cavalry has been killed. Now they have the option to move into the flank of these heavy cav. Now the reason they didn't is because if they did that, they'd be exposing their rear to those crossbowmen, and that's something they really didn't want to do. So they took their chances and charged in. Well, in the melee, in the close combat portion of the round, as you can see, oh my gosh, I rolled so poorly in defense for those mounted crossbowmen. Okay, so let me also say this. I won't go into this every turn, but this was kind of interesting. Light Cavalry have the highest initiative in the game at a bonus of a +4 to your die roll. Also, charging into combat gives you another +1. So they were a +5 to whatever they rolled on the dice. Mounted Crossbowmen are only initiative bonus of a +2. They rolled a 6 for an 8. The Light Cavalry only rolled a 1 for a 6. So in close combat, the Mounted Crossbowmen actually were able to go first. But again, they're very poor in close combat. They weren't able to do any additional wounds to Light Cavalry. Light Cavalry had a decent attack roll, but oh my gosh, I rolled so poorly in defense for the Mounted Crossbowmen that they ended up taking 5 wounds. Oh my gosh. We're on Matthew's turn. We're definitely going to get them out of there. Okay, so then over here, Axemen took shots from the Mounted Archers. Mounted Archers is simply shot forward. They did lose an Axeman. But so that's where we stand right now. It's still 0-0, but Kim is 1 wound away from eliminating that Mounted Crossbowman. And remember, when you cut a unit in half or more, that's a victory point. You eliminate the entire unit, you get the full points for that unit. But Kim is 1 wound away from getting her first victory point. But let's see how Matthew responds in Matthew's turn 2. All right, folks, we are back at the end of Matthew's turn 2, which means the end of round 2. The game is a third over. Of course, that doesn't mean much when round 1 is mostly about movement, but Matthew definitely got some payback. So some good news, some bad news. Let's start down here. Crossbowmen, they were considering reforming to fire into the flank of those light cavalry. However, if they did that, they'd obviously be exposing their flank, or worse, their rear, to these peasant militia, which isn't the worst thing in the world because they'd still have a shot at breaking away or at least reforming, but they decided to stay here and fire into the peasant militia, which they did, killing 1 and wounding another, so 3 wounds there. We'll get to this little feast in just a second. Unfortunately, and this is my fault, those light cavalry just have such a high initiative, it's going to be really hard for the crossbowmen to break away. So I did try to break away with the crossbowmen. You know, they won initiative in their close combat the turn before, but unfortunately I didn't roll high enough this time. They are stuck there. However, that means I did brace them so that on Kim's next close combat phase, they will get an extra defense die. Up here, the Axemen moved in. It took both their movement actions to get into close contact with those mounted archers, so they weren't able to get into a close combat this turn. However, they did take the free volley shots from the mounted archers. They took it on the chin, only a wound, however. Now let's come back over here. So Heavy Cavalry charged in. They got their... So a couple things happened. Heavy Cavalry have a collision special ability. When they touch another unit, when they move into contact with another unit, the other unit takes D6 collision hits. Ended up being 4 hits, only 1 wounded, and then the archers did get a volley shot back off. No wounds again. Then in the close combat phase, the mounted archers actually won initiative. They were initiative bonus of 2. The heavy cav is initiative bonus of a +3, but the mounted archers still won that initiative roll-off. They went first. Again, mounted archers, just like mounted crossbowmen, are terrible in melee. They weren't able to do any wounds to the heavy cavalry. In return, however, the heavy cavalry were able to do 4 wounds for a total of 5 wounds this turn with their collision hit. So that whole back rank is about to explode. So that's kind of the situation there and there, up and down. And folks, we will be back at the end of Kim's turn 3. Okay, folks, end of Kim's turn 3. Here's what happened. The Peasant Militia were able to charge in to the front of the crossbowmen. Now, the crossbowmen got a free volley, and man, did they take advantage of it. They did a whole bunch of wounds. That unit of Peasant Militia is now cut in half, so Matthew is the first to score victory points. Normally, cutting a unit in half is a single victory point, but because Peasant Militia only cost 1 victory point, or 1 point, when you cut them in half, you get half a point. So Matthew scored half a point for cutting that unit of Peasant Militia in half. Then Kim was able to actually get those swordsmen into the flank of the crossbowmen. Now, it took both their movement actions to do that, hence they have this double move token there, so they weren't able to engage in combat this turn, but they were able to do that. Now, in the melee phase, the Peasant Militia, even though they charged and would have gotten the initiative bonus, they decided to just hold. So they are bracing themselves. Basically, their job is done. Maybe on a future turn, maybe they'll get out of that combat, or maybe not. We'll see. Because, they don't want to lose she doesn't want to lose the entire unit, but they are bracing themselves right now, so there's no melee combat going to go on in this turn. Over here, mounted archers actually did try to break away. Unfortunately, they did not, so they are sitting there also bracing themselves. Back up here, the Light Cavalry were able to do enough wounds that crossbowman unit is now cut in half. No wounds to the Light Cavalry from the crossbowmen in melee. And then up here, these Light Cavalry were able to break away. The Light Cavalry stepped back just a little bit, kind of cheesily, because what they did was Axemen are only movement 3, so it'll take both of their movements now to get into contact with those Light Cavalry. So on Matthew's turn, he can move the Axemen using both of his move actions into contact with the Light Cav, but they won't be able to get into a close combat yet, since both their actions were used for moving, so they won't get an initiative bonus for charging. So that's why they moved them back, and then the mounted archers moved directly behind and shot through again, taking out another Axeman. But that is the way things look at the end of Kim's turn 3. Let's see how Matthew responds at the end of his turn 3, and thus the end of round 3. Okay, what an absolutely bloody end to round 3. We'll get to that in just a second. So these crossbows, I feel like I should have moved them back and not gotten it so that both of these units are able to get in contact, because once you're engaged on multiple fronts, you can't break away. So those crossbowmen are kind of stuck there. So I just am having them brace. The only option they would have is if they could kill off this Peasant Militia unit in melee, then they could reform or break away or do whatever they want. I just am not confident. They only would get 3 dice, so 3 potential hits, but they're all -1. So I don't even think they could finish off, because that Peasant Militia unit still has 5 wounds left. It would take at least 2 rounds of combat to do that, and I just don't see that happening. So they're bracing themselves for right now. They may have some support here very shortly because look at this. Oh my gosh. In melee, again, the mounted archers went first in close combat. They got a -1 to their attack dice, but they rolled really well on initiative. So they went first, -1 on their attack dice, still able to do a single wound. So the first wound on the heavy cavalry, the heavy cavalry in return did 5 wounds. Even with the brace die, heavy cav just completely slaughtered that unit. Kim, oh god. Her only chance to save these points is for her on her next turn to try to break away. Now, she has rolled to go first in combat the last 2 times, but she failed to break away the last time. She needs to break away and get that cav out of there. Hopefully, for her sake. Up here, tried to break away with the Mounted Crossbowmen, could not, so they're sitting there once again bracing themselves, and then the Axemen, just as we figured, use both of their movement actions to move into contact with the Light Cavalry. Light Cavalry will be engaging them in close combat next turn. So that's the game's half over. End of round 3 will start at the end of Kim's turn 4. Okay, folks, here is the end of Kim's turn 4. There were a lot of close combats. So here, let's talk about this first. Peasant Militia continue to brace themselves. The Swordsmen, however, did attack. They ended up doing 2 wounds to the Crossbowmen. Crossbowmen did a single wound back. Unfortunately, Kim could not break away. The Mounted Militia were panicked since they were at less than half of their unit left. So they were down to initiative bonus of a 1. So it was 1 to 3, and the Heavy Cav won that initiative. So she couldn't break away and is sitting there bracing herself. Here, the Mounted Crossbowmen did lose another Mounted Crossbowman. I don't believe they did anything in return. That's exactly how it looks there. So these Mounted Archers wheeled and shot into the flank of the Heavy Cavalry, doing a wound, so that did take off 1 Heavy Cavalry in the back there. Up here, oh man, it was so pathetic. So initiative roll-off was actually a tie, so the combat went simultaneously. Unfortunately, that did not necessarily favor the Axemen, though looking back, maybe it did. Because, well, I don't know, because the Axemen, as soon as they get cut in half, they get +1 to their attack dice. So going simultaneously meant they were just, even now that they are cut in half, they didn't get that +1, but they did get 6 attack dice instead of the 4 they're going to get next time now, because they took 3 wounds. I rolled for the Axemen first. They had a pretty good attack roll, but the Light Cavalry had a fantastic defense roll. So they only did a single wound. The Light Cavalry, oh my gosh, I rolled 3 6s, and unfortunately I did not roll 3 6s in defense for the Axemen, so they did take 3 wounds, and that is how it's looking there. Oh, that's a tough break there, because otherwise things were going so good for Matthew over here. But we will see how Matthew responds at the end of round 4. All right, folks, quick turn for Matthew ending round 4 because Crossbowmen can't break away, so they brace themselves. Mounted Crossbowmen failed to break away again, so they braced themselves. These Axemen decided to brace themselves. Why? Because if they somehow actually got out of that combat, which I doubt they could because, and I don't know if I can't remember if I explained this before or not, the Light Cavalry have the cavalry ability, of course. Now that means they get +1 initiative bonus when they're facing off against a non-polearm infantry unit like the Axemen. So they go from a +4 initiative to a +5, and Axemen are only initiative +2, but they're panicked because they're at less than half strength, so they're a -1. So it's a 1 to 5. So it's very unlikely they would break away anyways. But even if they did and, backed up, those archers could then shoot at them and try to finish them off in conjunction with the cavalry just charging back in and getting an initiative bonus to their melee combat. So now they're just bracing themselves at this point. Over here, Yes, Kim's mounted archer unit has been finished off. The heavy cav eliminated them, get a free reform, so they could have reformed facing any direction. They decided to face this way. Why? Because on Kim's turn, now she's not going to get a flank shot on these guys, and they can now either, depending if she leaves them there or what she does, they may either go toward the mounted archers, or maybe they will go help the flank of the Axemen. So a couple interesting options there, but the score right now is 3.5 to 2. Matthew is currently leading. Kim's 2 points comes from cutting that Axemen unit in half for a point, cutting that mounted crossbowman unit in half for a point. Matthew has half a point for the Peasant Militia and the full 3 points for that unit of mounted archers. We are now beginning round 5 with Kim. We'll be back. All right, folks, end of Kim's turn 5. Oh, God, I think Matthew needs a miracle at this point. So, mounted archers took shots at the heavy cav. They killed 1 more heavy cav. I was not expecting that. Up here, though, it was all good news for Matthew. Light Cavalry went first, didn't do a single wound to the Axemen. In return, the Axes did damage to that Light Cavalry unit. Next, we have this was the really bad part. These Light Cavalry, somehow, they went first in close combat. They did 4 wounds to the Mounted Crossbowmen. I'm just an idiot. It's really tough, though, because Light Cavalry are so fast that it doesn't really matter. I mean, these Mounted Crossbowmen were way back here, but those Light Cavalry still got to them, and it was just impossible for those Mounted Crossbowmen to get away. But still, I did not think Light Cavalry would do 4 wounds, and I failed to block, they did more than 4, but I blocked a couple, but they still ended up doing 4 wounds, so that finished off that Mounted Crossbowman unit. That was 4 points to Kim. Down here, these crossbowmen did another one to the swordsmen, so the swordsmen took a hit. The Peasant Militia braced themselves, so they weren't involved. The crossbowmen, though, took some wounds themselves, so they are 1 wound away from being cut in half. So what is the score right now going into Matthew's turn 5? It is, Kim has 4, 5. I think that's what it is. I think that's it, right? Yep, 5 points for Kim. Matthew has 3.5 still. 3.5 with maybe another point there, so 4.5. But Matthew can't lose anything else, and he needs to do something to get another 1.5 to at least tie it. Oh boy, it's going to be very interesting. We will see what happens at the end of Matthew's turn 5. Holy smokes, Matthew's turn 5, ending round 5, was short but bloody. So here we go. Crossbowmen again, can't get out of there. Brace themselves. Up here, the heavy cavalry moved in. Now, it took both of their moves to get over there, but getting over there allowed them to get a collision hit, and they got 6 collision hits, doing, 3 wounds, which cleared out that whole back rank of Light Cavalry. So boom, there's a point for Matthew right there. So then it was a question, did the Axemen engage in close combat? Now, so here's the interesting thing. The cavalry special ability is dissolved if the cavalry unit is engaged on more than one front. So they were a +4, becoming a +5 thanks to cavalry. They don't get cavalry anymore, so they're a 4. I'm talking about the Light Cavalry unit now. They are now outnumbered, so that's a -1, and they are panicked because they are at half or less. And so they are a 2. Now the Axemen are also still panicked, so they are a 1. So it's a 1 to 2. But you know what? We have 1 turn left. Those Light Cav aren't going anywhere. So I decided to brace with the Axemen. Because Matthew, if those Axemen are gone, it's over. I don't see any way Matthew can win back the points. So I braced with them. We'll see if that was a good idea or a bad idea. But that is where we are. It is now 4.5 to 5, I think, right? Let's recalculate this. So Matthew has half, 1, and 3. So 4.5 points to 4 and 1 to 5. Yep, it's 4.5 to 5, entering the final round. Round 6. This is Kim's turn 6, her final turn. Okay, can I just say this is the reason why I do not do this live? I was 10-15 minutes racking my brain. Folks, this is the most insane game I have ever played. Oh my god, I'm freaking out here. This is nuts. Let me try to calm down so I can explain what happened. So, Kim's turn, she's able to charge this light cavalry unit into the rear of the heavy cavalry. She moves the mounted archers here to get shots in the flank. Honestly, looking back, that really didn't matter because now it's a move to fire penalty, so it negates shots in the flank bonus. So she could have stayed there and just shot in the front. But either way, it was still face-up dice, essentially. They did no wounds, I don't think. What ended up happening was, and we'll get back to that in a second. Well, let's talk about it now. So, in the combat phase, Kim had a choice. If she braces this unit of light cavalry, it stops those Axemen from participating in this big combat and keeps them safe from the heavy cavalry here. These light cavalry attacked, they got to go first, and they did kill the last heavy cavalry in the back rank. That is a point for Kim. Looking back, that may not have been a terribly good idea, but we will find out soon enough. This isn't so crazy because she already was ahead. What was it? What does Kim have? So Kim has killed off 4, 5. So Kim had 5 points and Matthew has 4.5. So this extra point she just got bumps it up to 6. So it'd be 4.5 to 6 or 4.5 to 5. Either way, that really doesn't matter because Matthew, no matter what happens here, if he kills off this entire unit of light cavalry, that's 2 points either way. So it'd still be a victory for Matthew. So killing that extra point didn't do a whole lot, except for the fact that those heavy cavalry got attacks back and killed off another light cavalry here. So instead of attacking, Kim could have braced herself, but instead she did get another point doing that. She braced with those light cavalry because otherwise she thought about going aggressive and attacking these Axemen, but they were braced. She wasn't sure if she could kill them off. And of course, if she didn't, she would be facing attacks from the heavy cavalry and the Axemen, who are already going to be going after her this turn. So that would be like double dipping. I don't even know if I'm making sense, but there was so much going on here. I had to decide who braced and who didn't, but this is how that looks. This is the most insane thing that I've ever seen. The Crossbowmen won initiative and went first and killed off another Peasant Militia. They focused all 3 Peasant Militia in the front the Crossbowmen in the front on that Peasant Militia unit because if they had done 1 more wound, they'd be cut down to 3 wounds left. And in this turn for Matthew, he could have used all 3 and maybe if all the hits got through, eliminated that unit. That did not happen. But more importantly for Matthew, his Crossbowmen survived both the Swordsmen and the Peasant Militia unit. Both units were unable to do the final wound to this guy, and that's it. Matthew's going to brace himself here, and this combat's over for the game. He just saved himself a point by doing that. So where are we? We are now going to be going into Matthew's turn 6, the final turn of the game. I'm just going to tell you now. Let's just go ahead and do this now. He's bracing himself here. These Crossbowmen are done for the game. That is it. This is going on up here. You can ignore those archers. Those are out of the game. Here's what happens. Here's the score right now. Kim has halved that unit. That's 2 points, eliminated that unit. That is 6 total points. Matthew has cut that unit in half, cut this unit in half, and eliminated that unit. So that is 3, 4.5. 4.5 to 6. He needs 2 points to win. There are 2 points in Light Cavalry right there. He is going to attack with the Heavy Cavalry, attack with the Axemen. He cannot lose any more points. The Axemen have to survive being attacked back by the Light Cavalry. But if Matthew can eliminate this entire rest of this unit, he will win with the 2 points necessary to do it. Of course, he could, go after this unit of Light Cavalry here, and if he cut that unit in half, that would only be 8 points. So it'd be 5.5 to 6, and he'd need another half point somewhere. Again, he can't get the half point here because that's only 3 attack dice, and there's 4 wounds left. There's still 2 swordsmen here and only 2 attack dice there, so he can't get the extra point there. So he only has one option, and that he needs the 2 full points from that Light Cavalry unit. We will be back. I can't believe another game's going down to the wire. All right, folks, this is it. The final score of the game at the end of round 6. The crossbowmen braced themselves, so they weren't involved. Up here did not go quite as planned. So here's what ended up happening. The Heavy Cavalry only have 2 figures touching the flank of the swordsman. Normally you shuffle to get maximum units in contact, but since we were engaged in the rear, the Heavy Cav couldn't shuffle over. So instead of getting 9 dice against them, they only got 6. Unfortunately, even then, the attack roll wasn't that good. I think they may have done a wound, and at that point, it was not enough. The lone Axeman, he only had, and I shouldn't say lone because he had a buddy there with him for a while. So what happened was both Light Cavalry units got to go first. So, and we had to, and it was actually simultaneous. So instead of doing one combat and seeing how that went and then deciding who the other target had to be, I decided that since it's simultaneous, they both pick who they go after first. So I was like, okay, so who has the better shot here? These Light Cav, using 4 dice against the Axemen and 2 dice against the Heavy Cavalry, thinking maybe 2 dice plus these 6 dice may be able to finish them off. But I was like, no, we have a better chance, I think, if we do 6 dice against the Axemen. Unfortunately, that was the bright spot for Matthew, is that lone Axeman still survived, so that saves 2 points. And he got to attack back, but the Heavy Cav and the Axemen attacking that unit could not finish them off, unfortunately. And these Light Cavalry could not do anything more to the Heavy Cavalry. I think they did that 1 wound there and no wounds back, because this other Heavy Cav on the right did get attacks against them but couldn't wound. So that is it. I cannot believe another game came down to the final combat. That's insane. So Kim has victory points. She has 4 points for that unit of crossbowmen. 1 point for the Axemen, 1 point for the Heavy Cavalry, cutting them in half. So that is a total of 6 points. Matthew has eliminated a unit of mounted archers for 3 points, cut those Light Cavalry in half for a point, and a half a point for these Peasant Militia for a total of 4.5 points. It's 4.5 to 6. It could have been 6.5 to 6 if Matthew had eliminated those last 2 Light Cavalry. I cannot believe it. 4.5 to 6. Victory goes to Kim and her Regal Guard. That's 2 I kind of spoiled it. That's 2 victories then for Facebook versus YouTube. I cannot believe another game came down to the wire like this. Folks, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. Reminder, if you watched all the way through and you want to keep watching these, the rest of them will be on the Battlefields of Mana channel. Again, I'll have a comment down below from that channel so you can easily find it. But oh my gosh, I cannot wait to see what happens next. Thank you all so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it. And until next time.